Christy Frank. You were a speaker this year, and there's one seminar I want to really hang on, but tell me a little about what you were sharing this time around.
So this time I had 2 seminars. One was talking to consumers and not info dumping.
Love it.
And so we joked that we were info dumping, how not to info dump.
Yeah.
And the other one was discussing the state of the industry, but specifically the retail and restaurant industry on the ground.
Ciao, y'all. I'm Jessica Dupuy, guest host for a special TexSom series covering the 2024 TexSom Wine Conference from Dallas, Texas. Join me in the heart of the Lone Star State as we delve into the experiences and insights of key speakers and attendees, exploring career paths, challenges, and the latest trends in the wine industry. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and rate our show wherever you get your podcasts.
All right. Well, Christy Frank, thank you so much for joining us on the Italian Wine Podcast for the special TexSom series. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm so glad to be here.
I have to say, this is kind of the place. I've never been up to your shop in New York, which we'll talk about in a second. So but I get to see you often, almost once a year, sometimes twice.
Usually in Texas.
In Texas for TexSom related events. So I'm happy because it is kind of like a family reunion. You know, I know you and your background, but I wonder if you could kind of share with our listeners a little bit about Christy Frank and your journey to wine.
Sure. So, gosh, I've been in this industry for a while. I don't like to do the math anymore. It's been at least 25 years, if not longer than that. I started out sort of the way a lot of people wind up in the wine industry. I wanted to learn more about it. I went to Cornell. I took the wine tasting class at Cornell and just loved it. And I was the first of my friends to turn 21. So if anybody wanted to drink, they went through me. And so I learned not only do I like it, I like to talk about it. So, it was like, here, let me tell you about this delicious Finger Lakes Riesling. And they're like, just let me stop. Yeah. So that was that. So then was in Boston and wanted to learn more about wine, too cheap to take classes. So got a job part-time at a little wine store in between work and the apartment and just sort of fell in love with retail. That was my first real wine job and went to business school, worked for Moet Hennessy for a while. So sort of like big global experience.
What did you do for Moet Hennessy?
Well, when I started, it was Shefflin and Somerset. And Shefflin and Somerset at the time was a joint venture between Diageo and Moet Hennessy. So it was really, really unique. I could write an entire book about that. That's another podcast.
Okay.
But I started with doing sort of an internal consulting project. I worked on the classic malts of Scotland for about 3 months and got to go to Scotland twice in that time. That's a whole other story as well.
Not bad.
This is a little bit of like big drinks history. Diageo had just purchased part of Seagram's. And in the process of bringing that together, there was this whole distributor realignment project that basically happened. And Diageo had about 100 people on their side and Shefflin and Somerset had 2 on their side. It was my boss and I, and we had just done sort of an internal, let's do a strategic planning process. So we're like, you're the perfect people to do this project, which involved lots of PowerPoint and forums and things. So we put that together. And then I also worked on Hennessy, 10 cane rum launch. And the last thing that I did was run the US business for the Australia, New Zealand wine portfolio. And I was like, oh, wait, wine. That's why I got into this business because I love wine. Did that for about 2 years, which involves a lot of visiting different shops, doing work with, and just remembered, oh, right, retail. If I ever have a wine shop, this is how I would do it. I would do this. I wouldn't do that. And eventually it was just the time came to be like, enough of the corporate world. I'm going to open my own wine shop.
Fantastic.
So,
by that time, where were you?
So that was New York. In New York, most of that whole time. Oh, went to business school. That was when I moved to New York in sort of like 1998.
Nice.
It's been a while.
Okay.
And was at Moet Hennessy from 2000 to 2007 and opened the wine shop at the very end of 2007.
What was this wine shop?
This was Frankly Wines.
Love it. Because your last name is Frank.
The last name is Frank.
Okay.
And it was down in Tribeca. Now, if you know your sort of financial markets history, opening at the end of 2007 means our first holiday season was really 2008.
Yeah.
And we were right down by a company formerly known as Lehman Brothers.
Wow.
It was, we were there the day that it all imploded. It was wild.
Was that a big sales day for you or a horrible sales day?
It was a big sales day, but it was a sad sales day.
Sad sales
literally
day.
wandering in and being like, it's all just gone. And we like opened something and we're like, here, just
amazing. Drink. Wow.
So it was for a lot of shops and for the industry, it was a tough time. But when that's your first holiday season, you don't have it down. Like I didn't have boatloads of 2005 Bordeaux
Right.
coming to my shop at the top of the market. I had a 6-pack. I didn't have pre-orders of high-end champagne that I was going to be selling to people because I didn't have that customer base yet. So we didn't have a down year for years until
Amazing.
as the economy then started to go up, people started to leave the neighborhood during the summers to go travel. And we're like, oh, so it was just an interesting time in sales history that looks a little different than people would expect knowing their financial history.
Yeah.
So had that shop, and that was opened that again 2007, 2008. Around 2015, opened a shop up in the Hudson Valley,
Okay.
Hudson Valley Berkshires in the town of Copake.
Okay.
Familiar
There we
with that?
go. There we go. So just, for frame of reference, how far away is like Hudson Valley from, or how far is Copake from New York City?
Yeah, and it's a big valley up there. And when we first opened the shop, I was like, well, I know where I am, but I don't know where anything else is.
Yeah.
But the main points of reference would be we're about 2 hours north of sort of the Upper East Side of Manhattan, and about a half an hour to 40 minutes away from Hudson on the river, which is a town that a lot of people know. And then we're also about 30 minutes away from Great Barrington in Massachusetts.
Got it.
So I call it the 2-hour band. And our sort of unofficial tagline is we're in the center of everything in the middle of nowhere. Which is true.
Okay. Love it.
So opened that shop in 2015, not because I wanted a wine shop up in the Hudson Valley then, but the way that licensing works, it was such that, and there was a building available that we were able to purchase at a very, very good price. It was like, if I want to do this anytime in the next 10 years, I got to do it now.
Jump on it.
Running 2 shops 2 hours away from each other there's no scale. So sold Frankly Wines, which is still there.
Really?
Liz Nicholson is running it. So not a Frank, but a Liz.
That's so great.
And sold that shop in 2017 and have been increasingly focused up on Copake Wine Works. And in 2 years, we'll be up there full time.
Amazing.
So 10 years from now, which is what we said, I want to shop 10 years from now up here. So I got to do it now. 10 years is now 2 years.
So I'm curious, because you're talking about being in the center of something in the middle of nowhere. How do you do much online retail?
We do a decent bit of online retail. And I had a customer base in the city, obviously, from Frankly. So I still kept, what is the saying? People buy people and they buy me. So I've maintained that sort of customer base through internet, through newsletters, through whatever it might be. So we do have a regular delivery schedule. Like there's a lot of logistics involved in it, but that's where I'm a firm believer, anybody that's opening a wine shop, you think you're going to do all this online business, but there's absolutely no reason for anybody to shop at any wine shop online. We wanted to make sure that we were supporting the local customer, which is very diverse. There are local families that have been there for ages. There are weekenders. There are summer people. During COVID days, it was like half of Manhattan seemed to have moved up there. It looked like I had a great crystal ball, but it is very much a generalist store. In the way that, if you've got a little New York City shop, chances are it's a little shop and population density is such that you can have a really specialized program. So if you want to focus on a small book of spirits that nobody has ever heard of, you can do that. Somebody can walk into your shop, ask for something, you try to convert them to what you have. But if you don't, and they're really set on what they want, you can send them to the shop a couple blocks away. And it's fine. It's good service. You're able to try to come get people into your little orbit. But if not, that's fine. Up in where we are, if somebody comes in and they want something and I could sell it, but I don't want to sell it because I have plenty of space, I'm basically saying, screw you. Go drive a half hour. And that just doesn't feel good. It's not good service. It doesn't feel like very hospitable. This is ultimately the hospitality industry. So we sell a larger selection of products than we ever did in New York City, but it works.
So generalist in terms of you've got the global sphere of wine that is available. If people want to come in for Italian, they can. If they want to come in for New Zealand, you've got something which exposes you as you're the buyer. So you're having to keep up with what's going on all over the place, right? You constantly have that hat on of, okay, here's what I'm looking for, here's what I'm not looking for, that sort of thing.
And it's so always trying to, by the time I sold, frankly, our sort of average price point per bottle was $20 to $25.
Okay.
Up in the Hudson Valley, I thought it was going to be like $6 to $7. It was more like 10, probably now $10 to $15. But there's a lot of work that needs to go into finding really good wines at that price point. And big bottles of things that at the price point they need, they might not be anything I ever sold it, frankly, but we do sell up there.
Right.
And then just different regions, different styles. Like people will come into the shop, they'll say, "Oh, you're a natural wine shop." Well, because they see all the cool natural wine.
Exactly.
And then some people will come in and say, "Look at these fabulous Bordeaux and Barolo and the Brunello that you have." And they don't notice the natural wine or the big bottles. And then some people will go straight to the big bottles and they're like, "Oh, look, I have this whole selection of, I want Pinot Noir," and there you have it. And so people see what they want to see, which is something that I'm very good at, putting together a selection that everybody feels like the shop is just for them.
Is theirs.
Yeah.
And very local. So I'm curious, how do you stay on top of that? Do you rely on relationships with distributors, or are you constantly reading? Do you get to travel?
A little bit of all of that, because I'm still living down in New York City for the most part. And because I have all of this experience and history with the New York City buyers, I still go to tastings. I still get invited to the tastings, make sure that they know I'm here to be able to go to them. So I'm in that loop. It's much harder if you're up where we are and that's your main focus, because sales reps, I'm like, I don't want you to come out to the middle of nowhere. Like for something. It's a
big ask.
Yeah. And I can only buy so much. Like at Frankly Wines, we were doing like $1.2 million in sales before it all ended up in Copake. We're not doing that, but the cash flow is the same ultimately.
Fascinating.
But you can buy a lot more wine when you're selling $1 million worth of wine than when you're, selling 350 to 400,000. So I have to be really, really focused on, really disciplined on these sort of fun higher end stuff.
What you're going,
because it'll sit.
Yeah. So, but you do get to travel some too, because you recently went to...
I went to the Abruzzo.
Okay.
Yes.
And had you been there before?
That was the first time that I'd ever been to Italy.
You're kidding me.
No, which is sort of shameful in a way.
I mean,
as a, having been in this industry for as long as I've been into it, to not have gone to Italy. I've been to Australia 5 times.
That's
New
amazing.
Zealand twice, South Africa once, but
you just know the right people apparently.
And I worked for Wine Australia for a while.
Oh, okay, right.
The Hennessy business. So
fair enough.
But Italy was always like, oh, someday there. And I got there.
Yeah.
And it was amazing.
Okay. So I think about what you were just saying in terms of price points that you're looking to achieve, based on where Copake is. Do you feel like you were able to find some things there, or did you have that hat on, or was it more to experience?
It was to experience it and just to get a general sort of lay of the land, but always like look for what can we buy. Now the trip was through the consortium, and we didn't visit a co-op. There just wasn't time, which I would have loved to have seen a co-op. But I mean, I think that is part of what we were there to experience, was that we all know that the Abruzzo is a fantastic source of great value wines for like $9.99 on the shelf, or a big bottle for like a magnum size that you can get for like $17. That's not a secret.
Right.
What I knew, but when you get there and you really see it firsthand, is at that sort of, not the tippy top. I mean,
the sphere of the echelon. Yeah.
Copake and Valentini, like, of course, are
right.
Ups. Yeah. But so at the tippy top, we know what that is. But that kind of $25 to $50 price point on the shelf, where the Montepulcianos were just amazing. And I'm always thinking in terms of laterals, like what is somebody going to come in and ask for that I can give them something that they're going to understand it, but at a really good
a good
value.
Price, and also at a discovery.
Yes.
Yeah.
And those wines were amazing in the sense of, I could put some of those up against Napa Valley. Like, no, it's not Cabernet, but just in terms of the intensity and the concentration, and in some cases like that really beautiful use of oak, but they're still fresh. They've got that dark color, which, let's be honest, when we're selling wines at that price point, I can explain over and over and over why a pale wine is delicious. But if it's deep and concentrated, then
somehow
I
Yeah,
don't
know.
have to have
Yeah.
that conversation.
Yeah.
So that was just a really amazing discovery. And then, of course, meeting with winemakers, we like went way down a rabbit hole of why that's the case, what vine chemistry standpoint, which I won't go into now. The Cerasuolos were just delicious.
Yes.
And for a market that is crazy about chillable red wines, to have something that has that historical provenance and that this is what this is. It's the original chillable, deeply colored, I don't know, is it a rosé? Is it a red?
Like
It's
red.
Cerasuolo.
Either way, it's got great structure and you want more. Yeah.
So that was amazing. And then the Trebbiano's de Abruzzo, that was the real kind of eye opener for me.
Okay. Why is that?
Because we just don't see them a lot in the market. And we had just styles that range from like rich and sort of opulent and slightly oxidative to these beautiful styles that had like just this razor edge of reduction that you could put next to certain white burgundies.
For sure.
And in a blind tasting, it would be tricky. So like that sort of red, what would it be? Red, rosé, and white, or red, white, blue. Whatever.
But a full spectrum.
It was really like, oh, I can do some stuff with this. And then those were sort of the boom, 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 the three big buckets that I really kind of came away with that story. But then like the quirky things like, oh, let's try this Alianico down in the South. Like that makes all the sense in the world.
Absolutely.
Or some of the like the Pecorinos and some of the white blends that we were seeing, like just
is a good eye opener for you.
Yeah.
Now you've got your foot in the door. You're going to want to go back. It's going to have to.
I know.
It takes time. You're fine.
Yeah.
Well, so let's kind of transition. So we're at TexSom. That's where we see each other all the time. You were a speaker this year. Tell me a little bit about what you were able to, you spoke a couple of times.
Oh, yeah.
And there's one seminar I want to really hang on, but tell me a little bit about what you were sharing this time around.
So this time I had two seminars. One was, now I have to think about the official title.
That's okay.
It was avoiding talking to consumers and not info dumping.
Love it.
And so we joked that we were info dumping, how not to info dump.
Yeah.
And the other one was discussing the state of the industry, but specifically the retail and restaurant industry on the ground. Like from
what
we're seeing,
right?
What we're seeing, and not what the statistics are saying, because if you look at the statistics and where are they sourcing those numbers from, this is my belief, the smaller independent channels, smaller retailers, smaller restaurants were kind of invisible. Smaller distributors were kind of invisible. We're not reporting up to these big aggregates. And it was a conversation. Everybody on the panel was sort of like, I thought I was going to be the person who was moderately optimistic. And everybody was moderately optimistic.
All right. So I'm going to pause you there. We're going to break this down because I think this is really fascinating. First of all, actually, let's do for the wine dumping, or info dumping.
Info dumping.
Not wine. Nobody's dumping wine. Sorry. For the info dumping. That's basically just being able to talk to the customer without talking to them about, bricks levels at harvest and all of that stuff that maybe is a little too much info.
For some. Yes.
Okay.
And that was three of us speaking, and then Sam was moderating, and it was just kind of to a T meeting. How do you meet customers where they are? How do you suss out how much information they want to give? And one of the reasons it was probably a panel in the first place was because this industry, in TexSom, it's all about education. And you have a lot of people in this industry who are studying for this PIN or studying for that certification or this or that or the other thing. And you get excited and you want to just
share everything,
all that information. And that is perhaps where this industry's reputation as being a little like snooty and a little like wonky kind of comes from.
Yep.
So talking about how do you avoid that? How do you gauge what customers want? And then in my case, where do I find an outlet for my geekiness?
Yes.
Like, how do we do that?
Find both sides.
Yeah.
Okay. So now back to the state of the industry, because as you were saying, and to be clear, you came in here to do this interview just off of that seminar.
Yeah.
Your energy level was so high. I was like, wow, we're going to have a good conversation. Or you must have just come from a great conversation, because you're right. So let's break that down. We are hearing a lot of doom and gloom, right? It's like, oh, wine sales are down. Oh, nobody's drinking anymore. Oh, the young people aren't, it is hard to hear because welcome to media. We like to really focus on drama.
Yeah.
But what you're seeing on a really on the ground level, you're saying is a little bit different. So kind of tell me.
So to caveat it to start with, and this is sort of how I framed that conversation, a lot of the data that we see comes from So like, let's talk about IRI and scan data.
Okay.
So IRI Nielsen, that comes from grocery store scans. New York, for example, is 100% independent in terms of the retail channel.
New York State or New York?
All of New York State.
All of New York State is independent.
Yes.
Okay.
So there may be some wine is not sold in grocery stores.
Wine cannot be sold in grocery stores. I'm breaking this down because we do have a lot of Italian, listeners. So I want to be sure that
in New York, wine cannot be sold in grocery stores.
Mm-hmm.
To break it down even further, each corporate entity in the state of New York is allowed one retail license.
Okay.
So Trader Joe's,
a grocery store,
had one wine shop in the state of New York.
Okay.
I don't even know if Costco has a wine store in the state of New York. There are some grocery stores which happen to be family owned. So Mama might own one of the stores. Papa might own one of the stores, and each of those is technically a separate company.
Amazing.
But they cannot operate like a big grocery store chain like Albertsons or something,
or
where
Kroger,
you can buy these massive container deals and price it accordingly. That's even more detail.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, and New York there's been a lot of consolidation at the distributor level. The big distributors, the big national distributors are in New York. They are coming in, like RNDC just entered into New York recently, but there are probably hundreds of small distributors.
Yeah.
So there is so much wine, and they're not reporting their depletions.
They don't have to report their depletions?
Nobody has to.
Nobody has to.
So a lot of the numbers that we're seeing and the trends that we're seeing are based on the big part of the industry. Mm-hmm. Now, to be clear, that it's at least what we up on that stage represented, these small independents across the country. If we're being generous, maybe that's actually 20% of the value and volume. So I don't want to downplay some of these doom and gloom figures because there's a lot of wine out there. It is, for a huge part of the industry, there's going to be a correction. It's scary.
Yeah.
But at the level that we operate at, because remember, this panel was just about retail and restaurant on the ground.
And where were y'all from? Just like, what was the spread in terms of country?
Two San Francisco.
Okay.
2 from San Francisco, 2 from New York, and then 1 from Las Vegas.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So, one of the headlines is San Francisco's burning.
Yeah.
Well, you have 2 cautiously optimistic operators from San Francisco. So we were just sort of talking about what we are seeing in terms of what are young people drinking? How are they drinking? What are they not drinking at all? And one of the things we talked about is they are drinking more mindfully, but what does that mean? Well, it means maybe tonight they might want to have something from the non-alc selection. So maybe tonight they want to have something from the non-alc selection, and then maybe they'll start with that and then have a bottle. Maybe tomorrow they will just want the bottle. So there's a lot of sort of shifting and figuring out, what do we want to drink today? The criteria that they're thinking about is they are legit more interested in the farming or the sustainability, or what is that story? And the story varies, based on what they're kind of looking for. The trends that they're looking for, they are, I don't want to say that everybody just wants skin contact wine and glue wine, but what is happening at that level of the farming is important to people.
Okay. Yeah.
So in terms of the trends, it's not all doom and gloom. It just means kind of adjusting what the mindset is. If you want to make and sell a certain kind of wine, the customers increasingly, if that's not what they want, you're going to have to pivot. And if you can't pivot, or if you don't want to pivot, then you are kind of screwed.
Yeah.
In terms of what are the staffing and this idea that people don't want to work, well, not really. People do want to work, but there are structural issues about how people can get paid and healthcare. And are you working at this gig because you need healthcare, but you might actually like to do this other thing?
Right.
And it was, overall, we're all quite hopeful that there are bright spots in the industry. We are, some of the bright spots.
Yeah.
Does that help the 80% of the industry that has to find something to do with their wine? And maybe that is worrisome.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, it is an interesting part. I was out with some ladies who were in their mid-20s. Mm-hmm. I asked about this. I'm like, what is this whole, you're young and you don't drink anymore. Like, you tell me, what are you doing? Yeah. And it was fascinating because they were like, it's not that we don't drink anymore. There were a couple of things. One, it's that if we're going to do it, we're going to drink really good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And two, it's less about, well, we're all going to go to a bar and maybe I'm getting a glass of wine and he's getting a, bourbon cocktail and she's getting a vodka soda. It's more like we want an experience. And so we're going to go to a mezcal bar and only really kind of just talk about mezcal. Or one night it's going to be, we're not even going to it's not about the bar. We're just going because this really cool hot pot place has got great food and we may not drink at all.
Yeah.
And so it's just a different frame of reference or a different frame of mind that they're going for. And I don't know how you answer that, if you're on the other side, but it was a really interesting conversation because they're like, yeah, we're just more selective. We're more intentional about what we're doing.
Intentional, mindful. I think the statistic that we didn't put PowerPoints up there. It was after lunch and I love PowerPoint, but I was just like, no, not today, especially because we're not incorporated in the PowerPoint. But I think the study that I have seen that shows that something like 1/3 of young people, however that's defined, don't drink at all. But I believe if you look historically at consumption patterns in the US, going back years and years, historically, 1/3 of the US population does not drink at all. I remember that number vaguely from when I was at Moet Hennessy. So that hasn't really changed. I think we see perhaps more seasonality in the sense of we're going to do dry January, or we're going to do sober October. So you might see certain hits at certain times of the year. But if you know that's going to happen, you plan for it. And we're just up at my shop in the middle of nowhere. I have plenty of young people. I wish I was still a young person. I don't think the demographics consider me that anymore. But coming in and asking questions and drinking way better than I was at that.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's no longer Boone's Farm. And
yeah.
But I think that's actually an interesting point. So let's talk about sober October and dry January. Do you notice a significant dip in sales?
I mean, in where my shop is, January sucks. But January sucks because it's January. It's cold. And January has always been miserable because you've got your holiday hangover.
Post-holiday.
People anyway are drinking perhaps less because they've just been feasting. They have lighter pockets because they spent all their stuff on holidays.
Yeah.
And seasonally, like October, tends to be quiet for us anyway because we're not yet. November and December is when it's going to.
It's a really interesting point because are we really seeing a tick because of almost convenience of, well, we're not spending much money in October anyway. No one's going to say, let's do dry December.
Yeah.
Or are they? Right? Because that would be the thing to know, right? Like January, again, you're right. People are not wanting to spend money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
in all honesty, like it's as a retailer, there's so much interesting non-alcoholic and low alcoholic stuff out there that as a retailer, I'm like, well, I'll go back on this in a minute. I don't care. Like I would love to be able to sell all of that stuff and build that into my program because we do know that most of the customers that are drinking, did I say this already? Most of the customers that are drinking non-alcoholic anything are also drinking alcohol.
Correct.
So they're switching back and forth.
That's
it's
right.
just the occasion.
That's right.
Now in New York, because of the way the rules work, a retail wine and spirits retailer really isn't allowed to sell non-alcoholic product. It's a whole other
fascinating
boondoggle.
Well, okay. We don't have enough time to go into how each individual state handles that, but it's annoying and I'm sorry.
It's annoying and it's a huge lost opportunity. And it's something that I hope savvy retailers start to think we're like, okay, this is missing. And the customer that is drinking that stuff is drinking. Like I want them. I want to be able to provide them. And not even if they're going through like a sober month, but just to be able to pick up this and that and put it in the fridge and just, depending on what the mood moves them.
Yeah.
So
I love getting to hear this from, like you said, like independent, operators, because it is a different kind of level or stratum in the whole consumer world that you're seeing. And yeah, I think it's really valuable that you were able to kind of have people from different parts of the country really weigh in on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Now are we going to save the industry? Are we going to be able to absorb what's happening in certain regions that have little bits of wine lakes? No. But am I able to make a living,
see a
run my
path
business?
Forward. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Interesting.
And the panel was retail and restaurants.
Yeah.
On the ground.
On the ground.
Not in the data.
I think that makes the difference. Well, Christy, it's always exciting to talk to you. I want to ask you one more question before we go, because we didn't talk about how you're also a really great writer. And recently you entered something into, like, was it a contest or a writing?
So it's the Jancis
Robinson
wine. It's the readers, wine writers. It's the wine writers. Get what the exact title is.
Yeah.
But
it's a topic I want to ask you about. What did you choose to write about?
So the topic everybody was given is, what's your most memorable wine moment? And I wrote about a night at the shop. This was when we were down in New York City, and we were doing a wine tasting. And these wine tastings, like, that's a great thing about having a wine shop in a densely populated area. You do a tasting, people will show up. They're just walking by. You don't have to worry about it. They're coming in. And so this had been a tasting. I don't remember what we were tasting during the tasting, but it had just snowed outside, and it was just like, everybody was like, we were in a great mood, and it had been a lot of fun, and the shop is tiny. And so it must have been like this little party atmosphere. And as we were like breaking down the shop and putting everything back together, sometimes we'll open a bottle. And it was just this, it wasn't Italian. It was a bottle it was Spanish. It was pink. And we'd been like, we want to try this. And so we're like, well, screw it, let's open it. But we'd already dumped out the ice from the ice bucket, and it wasn't cold enough.
Oh no.
And it needed to be cold. And so we needed ice. So I walked outside, and there were some ice cubes, or like, I called it street ice. It was cold, and there was ice, and we made sure that it wasn't yellow, and it was fresh, and we just knocked off a piece and put it in our glasses, and we had street ice.
Street ice wine. I love it.
Street ice wine. And it was just amazing. And I found the picture of the bottle, but like, the bottle wasn't what was important. It was just that one of these moments where you wine was just this festive, fabulous moment.
Which is, I mean, to me, what I love is that, you send that to Jancis Robinson. So it really, with the intent that, like, basically saying, like, wine is exactly that. Like, we're all together. We want to do something fun, and we're going to enjoy this as a convivial experience. You know what I mean? So well done there, because it's been selected.
For the entire month, they published about 30 of them.
Okay.
And so mine was published, which means, at least people read it.
Yeah.
And hopefully it will make the short list. Okay. And then when they do the short list, they do a reader's choice, and they do the editors make their choice. So I'm like, awesome. Between one of those, I'm hoping
Well, congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us for this. I learned a lot, and I always learn a lot from you. And I hope that I see you again soon at the next TexSom.
Next year in Texas.
All right. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Listen to the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Himalaya FM, and more. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the show. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. Until next time, cin cin.